This right here is a piece of maple. It might even be ambrosia maple, but I don't know how far down that goes. And I've marked center, and I'm just going to go ahead and install this into my lathe between centers. Now I'll go ahead and true it up with my 3/4 inch roughing gouge. This piece of wood measures just 1/8 of an inch over 10 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and divide up the two pieces for the peppermill and for the salt shaker. The first mark is going to be at 6 inches, and then I'm going to make a mark at 5 3/4 and 6 1/4. I'm also going to make a mark at 1/4 inch in from the end, and another mark 1/4 inch in from the opposite end. Now we'll go ahead and extend these lines. Now I'm going to mark the one on the left as salt, the one on the left as pepper. And I'm going to draw these lines here so I don't lose the grain orientation. This layout makes a 10-inch tall peppermill and salt shaker kit, but it's all limited to your creativity. You can read more about that in your instructions, but you can make this whatever height you want and just cut down your shaft so it'll fit. Next, I'm going to use my parting tool to bring down the tenons on the end. Be careful about how deep down you bring these because that will be the maximum diameter of the peppermill itself. Next, with my thin parting tool, I'm going to go ahead and break these two apart where these two tenons meet. My thin parting tool measures almost 1/8 of an inch thick, so that's why we left the 10-inch blank just 1/8 of an inch too long. Once I get close, I can finish the job with a hacksaw. Now we can put in our scroll chuck. We can set the salt shaker aside for now, and we can put the peppermill in there with the bottom facing the tailstock. Now that I have the bottom of the peppermill flattened out, I'm going to go ahead and drill my first hole. It's going to be 1 3/4 and 7/8 of an inch deep. I've switched to a 1 16th inch Forstner bit in my drill chuck, and I want to drill all the way through until there's 2 inches of material left in the bottom. So because this is a 6-inch long blank, we're going to drill 4 inches deep, and I'll periodically check with the tape measure to see my progress. So you can see how the depth of all those holes is exactly 4 inches. So the next thing we're going to do is reverse the blank in the chuck. Now that that's flattened off, we can drill a 1 3/8 inch hole that is 13/16 inch deep on this side of the peppermill. I've switched to a 3/4 inch bit, and I'm going to drill all the way through. So now we need to open up that 1 3/8 inch hole a little bit to accommodate this peppermill cup here. This has a few shoulders on it that are too large to fit within the 1 3/8. So what we need to do is take our skew chisel or square end scraper or whatever tool you're comfortable with and make small little recesses and shoulders there to accommodate this. So the peppermill portion of this is now complete, and we can put on the salt shaker. I want to make sure that the bottom of this blank is facing my tailstock so that I can keep that grain orientation lined up. I've reinstalled my 1 3/8 inch Forstner bit in my drill chuck, and I'm going to drill a 1/16 inch deep hole, very shallow, just to fit the top cup of the salt shaker. We can give that a test fit, and that looks pretty good. Alright, now we want to reverse the blank in the chuck. This right here is my finished salt shaker, and what we're going to do now is part off what will become the lid of the salt shaker. So if we look at it, this part here is going to be the bulk of this, and this small piece here will be somewhere around the top. I'm going to make a mark just a hair over 1.5 inches in, and I'll extend that. And I'll part it off with my thin parting tool. This is 1.5 inch Forstner bit, and I'm going to drill 1/2 inch deep with it for the male threaded part. Now I'm going to bore down a little bit more with the 1 1/16 Forstner bit. I want to leave no less than 3/4 inch material at the bottom of the salt shaker. Now we can take this guy out of the chuck and put in the top of the salt shaker. We're going to drill 1/2 inch deep into the salt shaker top with our 1.5 inch Forstner bit, and this will be for the female threaded part. I've roughed up both of the threaded inserts with sandpaper so that they'll bond to the wood better, and I'm going to glue them in with a medium CA. In your instructions for the peppermill, you'll find this drilling template to drill out the holes for the lid of the salt shaker. I still have the center on my blank here, so I'm just going to line that up with the center hole. And I have a spring-loaded punch here, and I'm just going to make some pilot holes for my drill bit. I suppose you could drill these out with a hand drill, but I want to make sure that these are as straight as possible, so I'm going to use my drill press. Okay, so what we're going to do next is finish off and work on the shape of this. And to do that, we need to connect all the parts together so that we can hold them all together on the lathe instead of turning them individually. So the salt shaker and the salt shaker cap are already solved because the lid just snaps on there. But as for these two components, the peppermill and the salt mill, there's really not a good way to hold them together. So what you're going to need to do is turn yourself down a little tiny jam chuck. This measures this hole right here, and you're just going to screw this in there. Be very cautious not to screw all the way through into the salt shaker's body, otherwise you're going to leave a little hole and salt will leak out. So just screw it in there enough. And now that can fit right on into there, and we can safely mount this on the lathe. The instructions for this call for the turning of a jam chuck to plug into this end here. I, however, happen to have the peppermill chucky from Rubber Chucky Products, which is a step jam chuck for peppermills. So mine will fit snugly over that, and I'll bring in the salt shaker body with that temporary tenon. Bring that up. And I'll pull up my tailstock and apply pressure to the center hole of the salt shaker cap. And that is not going anywhere. So now we can bring up our tool rest, and we're ready to turn. I'm going to finish these up with a few coats of spray lacquer. So this will be our finished peppermill. I got a nice glossy lacquer finish worked up on it. The grain orientation lines up, and it looks pretty good. Now all we need to do is assemble it. To start, this tenon needs to be removed. I don't want to get hung up in the details of how to assemble this kit, so I'm just going to sort of flash past all this. For all the details, they're going to be available inside the instruction manual. Here, though, I will show how this goes together. The bottom half here is the peppermill. You can see the grinding mechanisms are down here. They're screwed in place. To adjust the coarseness of the grind, there's a little knob right here that you can twist left or right. The shaft for the peppermill goes up. You could trim it if you want, if you built a shorter peppermill. Just make sure it doesn't bump into the salt shaker. The lower cup for the peppermill gets sunken into the peppermill body like we carved out earlier. The other cup gets screwed into where that temporary tenon was, and that will snap the peppermill halves together. Anyways, those two get screwed into the bodies, and that is essentially it. Just as a side note, you can be as creative as this as you want to. The cool thing about this kit is that it can be whatever you want it to be. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to the height of this guy. You can make it a 10 inch at its tallest, and anything under the sun past there, just by grinding down the shaft to a little bit of a shorter length so it can fit within the peppermill's body. This right here is their classic design. This is just an unfinished piece of walnut. And like I said, this is kind of the classic original design with them, but you don't have to be limited to this. You can do whatever you want to. Here are some other examples of work. I've just made a piece out of American elm, and that's this one right here. I turned another one out of maple. That was the one that I demonstrated in this video. And I also made another one out of some oak. The beauty of this kit, in my opinion, is that there are so much opportunities for inventiveness and originality when it comes to your design. So I think before you just go ahead and start making cuts and doing some random design, you should really think about what you want to do and make it entirely your own peppermill. Alright guys, and that's it. I hope you all enjoyed watching the video, and I hope this was helpful to some of you who are turning this. My finished peppermill ended up being 10 inches tall, and it was made out of maple with this one spot of ambrosia on the top. The unique part about this design of peppermill is that the top half is a salt shaker, and the bottom half is a peppermill. It's a simple project to make, and I hope you all will take it on. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for new wood turning videos every Friday, and I will see you all next week. Take it easy.